The next tip we're going to talk about is stabilization of the lower leg. This gives riders a lot of issues while they're riding. Sometimes the rider will have a swinging lower leg while they're cantering. Sometimes the rider will constantly bump when they post the trot. And to me, I think that the lower leg should actually be on cruise control. And by that I mean that this portion of the leg from the bulb of the calf on down should not touch the horse's side unless you're actually asking for the horse to move forward. And all of that stems from the former riding tips we've been talking about, which is seat position and the forward 12 o'clock position of the foot. So what we're going to talk about is pretty much the lower leg, because the lower leg is your accelerator. That's your gas pedal. That's what tells the horse to go. So I like to tell my riders that they have a zipper from right here at the center of the knee to right down in front of the ankle. And that zipper has to face forward towards 12 o'clock as much as possible. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring the lower leg off of the horse's side, but still give you a connection with the bulb of your calf in order to hold onto the horse and have a nice supple contact. You want to make sure that there's no daylight between from the top of the thigh, the middle of the thigh, the lower part of the thigh. You don't want to grip with your knee, but you do want to have just a nice hold, and right at the top of the calf you have a contact. So Bethany, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to stand straight up in the stirrups. Okay, and this is actually a good thing that you can do to practice keeping your lower leg stable, because if she can stay up there and stabilize herself while I punch her about, then she's able to stay on the horse while she's moving. So go ahead and bring your pelvis underneath you, just like we talked about before, and think of your bucket right here full of water, and it's not going to dump frontwards or backwards, and have a nice softness through your knee, and make sure that your toe and your foot is pointing forward towards 12 o'clock. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her to keep her level foot as we were talking about before, and you can see that Bethany is very stable with her lower leg and her upper body. Now I'm going to ask you to do some of the things that riders sometimes do. Okay, so I'm going to beat you up a little bit. I'm going to ask you to kind of come forward onto your toe. Okay, and this is what happens to riders sometimes, and you can see that her heel's rising. Right now, if I were to try to push you, what happens? You lose your balance and fall backwards. So go ahead and stand up again for us. So we see that that doesn't work. So now let's do the opposite, and let's do too much heels down. And we've already talked about too much heels down locks the front of your ankle, it locks your knee, and it locks your hip, and you can see it's tough for Bethany to stay up there. Right now I'm going to just bump her, and you can see that she falls backwards in the saddle. So go ahead and stand up for us one more time again. And keep the softness in your pelvis, keep your hip nice and open, bend through your knee as if you were just kind of going to kneel on the ground, that's it. And your toe and foot is going to point forward towards 12, and just keep that nice softness through your leg, and you can see that now she can stabilize herself and stay up there. And that's really important when you're actually riding your horse in motion at walk, trot, or canter. The other big thing that everybody's always puzzled about is 2-point position. So you can see, go ahead and sit in the saddle for me for a second. 3-point position is actually just contact with one thigh, the other thigh, and your seat. So you've got inside thigh, that's 1 point of contact. The opposite inside thigh is your other point of contact, and your seat is your 3rd point of contact. This would be your full seat position. If I were to ask Bethany to go into a 2-point position, all she's going to do is pick her seat or peel her seat away from the saddle. So I'm going to ask you to stand straight up again, because this is the easiest way to do it. Make sure that we're stable. And I'm just going to ask you to come back as if you had thumbtacks on your saddle, and just gently just lift yourself a tiny bit off the saddle. This would be your 2-point position, and now you can see Bethany's upper body is very stable. I can push her from the front and I can push her from the back, and she stays put, and that becomes extremely important. Go ahead and overdo 2-point sometimes, what people do. Yeah, and now you can see she becomes extremely easy to topple over, and that's exactly what the horse will do to you if they were to suddenly go forward or slow down without you expecting it. So we can see that some of the stabilization with the lower leg is actually some of the stabilization with the foot and the seat that we've already gone over. But just in review, we want to make sure that your zipper is pointing forward towards 12 o'clock, that you have a light contact with the top part of your calf, and right by the horse's barrel, this is going to be cruise control. The kneecap, if it had a smiley face on the front of it, would point towards 12 o'clock as much as possible, as well as your hip joint. So those are just some riding tips to make your lower leg more stable.